And she ripped into him and said, "I don't need that." And she delivered a tirade to the startled man until the end of the ride in the elevator. The entire time, just a tirade against him, you know, that she doesn't need him to tell her where she can go. She has a mind of her own and her own abilities, and she doesn't need permission from a man. Jeez. So a little tiny bit of applause and it all goes to her head. Hi, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Revenge Review, where we're going through Tom Bower's Revenge. And last episode was crazy. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It was all about Meghan on her manhunt, desperately seeking a man, embarrassing herself on the streets of England, just so desperate to find not a good man, but a famous one, asking everybody she meets, barely knows people, "Do you know somebody? Do you know somebody? Do you know somebody?" So humiliating. And then we went from that to talking about how she was an influencer on her vapid and ridiculous website, The Tig. And by the way, it's not going to get better. We're going to talk about that some more today too. And the stuff she's writing is just like, Meghan, would this inspire you? Because if this is inspirational to you, it tells me a lot. Anyway, she's all the day long trying to put herself out there as this like positive vibes girl, you know, always just saying something to uplift the female spirit and just trouncing all over female minds with her dumb and vapid and meaningless little cliches to make us all feel better about ourselves. Well, I don't feel better. Okay, so this chapter we're talking about her and the golfer Rory McIlroy. So this is astounding to me. And I have to say, I'm equally astounded by Corey's behavior throughout all this. Now, not shaming him, I'm just shocked that he stuck around so long when Meghan's behavior was so wild. I can't imagine anybody in their right mind being like, red flags everywhere. This girl is 100% cheating on me, but I'm going to pretend it's not happening. I'm going to believe her every time she says it's not. What? Nobody acts like this with somebody of the opposite sex if you have zero interest in them. All right. So anyway, we'll get into it in just a minute. I want to address two things that came up in the comments of last episode. I like to get my facts straight. The first most pertinent one, because it was mentioned so many times, was the fact that Ashley Cole was divorced in 2010. So when Meghan finally showed up on the scene in like 2013, Ashley Cole was not attached to anybody. Now, I don't know Ashley Cole. I'm not over here watching what Chelsea and England are up to. Surprise, surprise. But several people in the comments said, you know, he wasn't cheating on his wife if he was involved with Meghan. You know, he's not a great guy, but it's not as bad as it could be. So thank you for that. I don't want to tell falsehoods. And I mean, the things that people are doing are wild enough. Like, you know, most of the time you don't need to over exaggerate what they were up to emphasize the degradation of the event. So I didn't mean to make it sound worse than it was. Tom Bower implies that he was married at the time, so I'm just going by what he says. But anyway, it looks like he was wrong about that. And then the other thing, apparently I've been saying Jessica Mulroney's name wrong. I've been saying Mulroney, and this person said, no, it's not Mulroney, it's Mulrooney, like in the end of Kangaroo. So I'll make sure to say that right now. This chapter, delicious. Before I begin, please comment, please like, please subscribe, send to a friend, hit the bell for notifications. Spread the word far and wide that there's story time over here. Okay, now chapter 7, The Irishman. Now the Irishman that we're referring to is one Rory McIlroy. And at the summer of 2014, he was the big name in golf because on the 10th of August, he had won the PGA Championship just by one stroke. The guy was only like 25, like real young. And so obviously this kind of domination was really exciting to him and he wanted to celebrate. Okay, well that's all right. He was in all-out party mode. So right after the championship, 2 a.m. the next morning, he's in New York. He walked into the Fitzpatrick Hotel on 57th Street and Mexican Avenue, and everybody who saw him over the following days recalls the golf champion as hot, hot, hot. He partied non-stop across Manhattan for 24 hours with his entourage. Then, without a break, he took a private jet, flew across Atlantic to Manchester to collect a prize, and then, after collecting his prize at Old Trafford, went back to Manhattan to appear on TV with Tiger Woods. So it was like 9 straight days of like non-stop partying, flying back and forth, unbelievable amounts of celebration and wild behavior. So Tom Bauer writes, by 19th August, he was looking for relaxing fun. McIlroy had just split from his blonde fiancée, and it looked like he was now chasing brunettes. At this particular moment in time, the cultural thing was the ice bucket challenge. Do you guys remember this? I never really got what this was about. So you would nominate somebody, and celebrities were all in on this. You would nominate somebody to dump a bucket of ice on your head, and then you'd film it, and then somehow that was supposed to raise money for ALS. I never really got how it was raising money for ALS. Was it like all the money you'd get off of a specific video, if people watched it, then you would donate that money? I never got what the ice bucket challenge was about. Granted, I wasn't like over there really watching it happen, but I just kept seeing videos of it and being like, when is this going to be over? Anyway, unexpectedly, McIlroy nominated Meghan to drench herself with ice. But lo and behold, who should be like literally staying right next door to him at her friend's apartment, which was right next to the Fitzpatrick Hotel? Oh, Meghan Markle. So, not uncoincidentally, Meghan was staying with her friend, and she told him, yeah, sure. I'll do the ice bucket challenge, but you have to come over here and dump the ice on my head. So, she accepts. Of course, he accepts, and he, hustles on over and personally pours the bucket over her on the balcony of her friend's apartment. Right afterwards, she and Rory go on over to the Fitzpatrick Hotel to have a drink. And who should spot them but the hotel's owner? He sees him in the bar. His name is John Fitzpatrick. He's 54. He's an Irish American. He is all about promoting himself. He's a well-known name in the circle of philanthropy, donating millions to charities. He's a friend and donor to the Clintons. He's a mover and a shaker. He's a networker himself. And he is a confirmed bachelor. I don't know if they're using that in the old term, but I think he does not mean it in the old term. Really, it just would appear that he is enjoying being a single so that he can escort lots of beautiful women. And he's very famous for giving them very expensive gifts, especially Louis Vuitton stilettos. And he really enjoys the media. So when he spotted Rory McIlroy and Meghan Markle together, he saw his chance to pounce and make a couple of new friends. Apparently, he's like the one and only person who legitimately means it when he says he's just a huge fan of suits. And he saw Meghan Markle, and he said that he walked right over to them. As it would turn out, Sarah Rafferty, who's a lead in the series, had become a good friend of his, and so he was keen to also meet Meghan. He invited the couple to come and have dinner with him, and later that night, she and Fitzpatrick and McIlroy and like 20 other people were seen later that night partying, and Meghan was practically in McIlroy's lap the whole night. So it's not starting out real well as far as her trying to say, oh, me and Rory have nothing to do with each other. We're just like totally friends. But which of your friends who you don't even know would you come over and be like, let's do the ice bucket challenge, and then let's go get a drink, and then let's party all night? Those aren't the things I would do if I was like totally not interested in a guy. Okay, so anyway, following this hectic evening, McIlroy has to go about 30 miles away to go play at this golf tournament, a new competition. He had just won the PGA Tour, not but like 10 days before. But he's quite worse for wear here. And he falls all the way back to 101st place in this competition. But see, and this is when I say the dude was totally doing something with Meghan. Because instead of staying close to the golf course that night, as one would, like you've fallen all the way to 101st, okay? You just finished being the champion over here, PGA Tour. Now you're over here falling all the way to 101st shortly after. a man who is now 100% distracted would be like, I'm going to bed early. I'm coming back. I'm roaring back in tomorrow. This is ridiculous. I can't believe this happened. Like, he would not be thinking, I got to go get back to Meghan. But that's actually exactly what he was thinking. So he goes and he drives all the way back to New York City so he can spend some more time with Meghan. That's not something that a man would do if he was just friends with you. Okay. So his performance suffered greatly because of his behavior and him catting around with Meghan Markle. And he even confessed, he wasn't quite on my game. I was enjoying myself. Yeah, clearly you were. Back in Toronto at the end of the week with Corey Vidiello, Meghan gushed about the golfer in the TIG. Okay, so I can't imagine. Let me just read to you what she wrote about Corey. Because I'm astounded that she felt that she could speak this way about another man when she's like sleeping in the bed with a different guy. Like, if she thought that the guy that she's with isn't gonna come, being like, hey, what's going on with you and Rory? I mean, she must think that Corey is an idiot for her to carry on this way and then think she can come to him and be like, it's nothing, stop, nothing's going on. Okay, listen to this. This is not the way I would write about a guy that I had no interest in or wasn't trying to shout to the rooftops to let people know, look who I'm with. Okay, so she writes this. Ah, yes, Corey McIlroy, the Corey McIlroy, whispered and shouted to be the foremost golfer in the world, loved by Tiger, respected by Palmer, and dumper of frigid water onto my lone head for the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. That, Rory McIlroy. He is a force who has the propensity to actually work hard and play hard, relishing intense practices to substantiate his title, embracing nights of sipping Opus One, his bold and impressive choice of wine, and indulging in dinner parties at Cipriani for the balance, of course. And yet, beyond his work-play ethic, the most endearing quality of this man is his character, as real and honest as they come, appreciating a simple smile, never shining a fan photo, enjoying a plate of pasta with veal ragu, and expressing a love for his parents that is rarely seen in men his age, or any age, to be honest. He's not just the real deal, he is real, and perhaps that is what makes him even more cherished. A critical darling and fan favorite, it's for good reason. He's born and raised in Hollywood, Ireland. Long cry from my hometown of Hollywood, California. And yet he alone could be the impetus for his Hollywood's own Walk of Fame. I imagine they would be glad to welcome that gilded boulevard in his honor. Today's TikTok is with courteous, classy, and ever so talented Rory McIlroy, who, by the way, had the kindness and wherewithal to not put the 2 bags of ice I bought into the bucket. He wanted me to raise awareness for ALS and yet also survive the challenge, and for that I am most grateful. Ugh, yuck. By the way, he had the kindness and wherewithal not to put the 2 full bags of ice into the bucket? Well, then why did you buy 2 when wherewithal would beg for fewer bags of ice? That doesn't, everything that she writes, and what is this? The dumper of frigid water on my lone head for the ALS challenge. Your lone head? What are you talking about? You're just throwing in words now because what are you doing? Yeah, it usually is just one person who is receiving the ice in the challenge. It's an individual challenge. It would be your lone head. Do you know what words mean, Meghan? Come on. Okay, so after that disgusting, gushing article about one Rory McIlroy, it would stand to reason that her boyfriend would be like, hey, what's going on with you guys? Right? Okay, but she doesn't care about that. She's just really keen on using this relationship to promote herself. And she is very much encouraging of pictures of herself and Rory to be published in different media and in different publications. And as she would later admit, and this is so important, she's admitted this about her and do I keep saying Corey? I mean to say Rory. I'm sorry. I keep mixing their names up. As she goes on to say, as she would later admit, that she occasionally set up a paparazzi photo or let info slip to the press about where she and Rory would be. Okay, so this is her mode of operation now. This is how she does. When she wants, and the thing is, we knew that, but if she's going to admit this about Rory and her, then this is what's also going on with her and Harry. And for her to act like, I can't believe the paparazzi keeps showing up. Well, you're tipping them off all the time. This is how you do with famous people. So Corey, the man she's in a relationship with, asks her, what's the deal with you and McIlroy? Like, what is happening there? And Meghan insists that their time together is totally innocent. And beyond all judgment, he believes her. And at the time that of the first questioning, Meghan, it's not like she was just hanging out with him because he happened to be in New York and so is she. Now she's making visits to him all the way in Ireland. And she and McIlroy and Fitzpatrick, they're all going to go hang out together in Dublin. Why would a boyfriend be okay with this? If I said to my husband, oh yeah, I've met this guy and, you know, I've been out all night with him partying, and he's a golfer, but he's not going to stay near the golf course. He's going to come hang out with me again. We're going to party again. And, he's going home to Ireland, and I'm going to go to Ireland too and just like hang out some more with him. I do have like a speaking engagement there, but, I have to go because of the speaking engagement. But yeah, me and McIlroy are going to hang out. My husband would be like, what the hell are you talking about? As well he should. Okay? So anyway, Meghan did have a legitimate reason to go to Ireland. She was going to be speaking at One Young World, this conference in Dublin. Now, it's really complicated how she managed to find her way into this conference and into its speaking engagement. Suffice it to say that she networked her way in. She was friends with this photographer who she knew was friends with Boris Becker, the tennis champion. And so she asked the photographer to ask Boris Becker to ask his agent to meet with her and potentially get her into this One Young World conference because she wanted to start working on this side of her personality and the side of her public presentation as a gender equality, positive change spokeswoman. Okay, so after lots of networking and lots of, can you see if, would they be interested in, can I meet with? Finally, she meets with Becker's agent, Gina Nelthorpe Crown. Now, Gina, I feel like perhaps it's because she's such a mover and a shaker herself and such a networker of her own. She's not going to call it out on somebody else. She thinks Meghan's awesome. And they develop quite the friendship. So after meeting this agent, the agent says, oh yeah, I've gotten in at this One Young Life conference, and I'll talk to the organizer, Kate Robinson, and see if I can get you a spot to speak at. And I think I can. Well, she does manage it, even though initially Robertson's like, I don't know who that is. I don't think that we want her at the conference. We're trying to draw in some big names. But then after talking to her daughter, who apparently did watch Suits, her young daughter, the young daughter was like, oh yeah, get Meghan Markle. That'd be fun. So they do end up including Meghan. Now, she's a very minor attraction at this event. They'll cover her expenses to come, but nobody's going to pay her any money beyond that. After she had booked it, she messages an Irish friend of McIlroy's. So apparently, now it's not like she just knows him. Now she knows his friends, which again speaks to me of somebody who is much more than just a passing acquaintance. If you know his friends too, something's going on here. Well, she messages one of his friends and says, lock something down. I head out here October 14th through the 17th. Have a wonderful night. Kisses, MM. Okay, well, lock something down. What is this even in reference to? But apparently she's looking to party with them. All right, well, she gets to Ireland, and Gina Nelthorpe Crown comes to meet with her. Remember, that's Boris Becker's agent. And she immediately hits it off with Meghan. Meghan answers the door, nothing but a bathrobe toweling her hair. So it's always this huge performance to be like so nonchalant. I would never answer the door in a bathrobe toweling my hair like I just crawled out of the shower. When I was going to meet somebody who I planned on working with, like, that's disrespectful to the person who showed up. You're not ready to meet. But Interestingly, Nelthorpe Crown was like kind of into it, that Meghan was down to earth. I don't find that down to earth. I find that disrespectful. She writes that they hugged each other as though they'd known each other for ages. She was delightful. She was warm and she was personable. And Nelthorpe Crown really sympathized with Meghan's endeavors to promote her profile and increase her income and become influential. I mean, again, this woman was an agent, so obviously she's going to be sympathetic to that person's desires to promote themselves. She's in league with that desire because that's how she's going to get paid. Nelthorpe Crown thought Meghan was awesome, and they really end up, like I said, solidifying quite a relationship that goes on to do a lot of good for Meghan's career. Now, like I said, Meghan did get a slot to speak at the One Young World Conference. And in attendance of this, there were other guest stars who happened to be sitting in the front row of her speech. Mary Robinson, who is Ireland's former president, Kofi Annan, the former United States Secretary General, had flashed Meghan this engaging smile. And so Meghan was kind of moving with the people of some global importance. And this really made her self-confidence soar. Now, when she gave this speech, by anybody's intellectual estimation, anybody with a brain sitting there would have been like, oh, what'd you really even say though? But apparently it was exactly the sort of political BS that makes everybody feel warm and fuzzy. And so she got quite a lot of applause for her speech, which jetted her spirits to new heights. When she gave her speech, it was all about how she identified as a mixed race woman. She spoke about her childhood and that whole box incident when she didn't know which one to tick. But she didn't really talk about how she personally had suffered racism. She didn't mention discrimination. She didn't say that it had always held her back in her career. She didn't question the status of a mixed race woman in Western civilization. She didn't go that deep into things. She just talked about how, don't let anything hold you back. Don't let anybody tell you what you are type of talk. Tom Bowers says the totality of her speech was to urge her audience to admire her own personal experience and to adapt her mantra of togetherness. I mean, but nobody's going to be against those sentiments. I mean, okay, sure, let's all be together and let's not let anybody hold us down. Okay, sure, fine, whatever. But the politicians in the crowd loved this nebulous and unspecific positivity speech. And that's exactly what they do all the time. They just talk and don't say anything. So they gave her a rousing round of applause. And this just confirmed to her that she was now going to be jettisoned into new heights, new political heights, and her aspirations began to grow. And it might be why she snapped on this one guy right after she got off stage and was going to the elevator. This one guy, just being polite, he was in front, he beckoned that she could go ahead of him, just being nice. And she ripped into him and said, I don't need that. And she delivered a tirade to the startled man until the end of the ride in the elevator. The entire time, just a tirade against him, that she doesn't need him to tell her where she can go. She has a mind of her own and her own abilities, and she doesn't need permission from a man. Jeez. So a little tiny bit of applause, and it all goes to her head. Meantime, in the background is poor boyfriend Corey. He's just kind of hanging around. So I guess he did come to Ireland with her, which if she had gone alone, that would have cemented it all. Of course, she has to tell him he can come. So he's hanging around in the background. He'd flown from Toronto with Meghan. Some have said that it was on a private jet paid for by Rory. And he was introduced everywhere as this famous chef, but it was sort of collectively agreed that Corey didn't have much of a personality. He was kind of quiet, didn't say much. Well, would you though, if you were the boyfriend who was trying to piece together what exactly was happening in your relationship? I'm sure his mind was going a million miles a minute trying to figure out, okay, wait, what's happening here? Why is my girlfriend acting so weird? Who's this Rory McIlroy edging in on things? So I can imagine that he probably did seem a little preoccupied in his mind and wasn't a huge talker. I don't think I would have been. I feel like if I was in that situation, I would be there, but like in body only, but my mind would be a million miles away. Okay, so people were sort of disappointed by him. They didn't feel that he was a Gordon Ramsay type and, just not that big in your face personality. Poor Corey. He's just being trampled by everybody. Okay, so on the same night that she gives that speech, after she gives the speech, fills her mind with the ideas that she's the best, then it's time for, and then she rips into that guy in the elevator. She then goes to dinner that night with Rory McIlroy at this upmarket restaurant called Fade Street Social. Everybody who saw them together said she looked completely smitten. Couldn't stop staring at him. Couldn't stop, they were sitting right beside each other the whole night, very cozy, chatting all night. This is not the behavior of somebody who's in a committed relationship. And this reporter, Alexandra Ryan, who was a newspaper gossip column, said that they just looked like they were in a fantasy world together. This was Meghan's third night in Dublin. And on a previous night in Dublin, John Fitzpatrick would describe his dinner with her and later implied that she and McIlroy had secretly met. And also, McIlroy's friends said that Meghan and Rory had met unseen earlier during her visit. Okay, so she's only been there three days, and she's publicly been eating with him at a restaurant, all up in his business, all practically sitting in his lap the whole night. John Fitzpatrick says, yeah, previously to this, I was out with them, very cozy. I think they met again later that night. His friends are saying, oh yeah, she was meeting with him. So 3 days, and she's been with Rory constantly and continually, if not openly, then secretly. And there are people who say that this happened. This is not the behavior of someone in a relationship. Poor Corey. And not surprisingly, Corey's like, what the hell is happening here? Okay? The newspapers are reporting that you're out with McIlroy all night long. I'm over here at the hotel by myself. What is happening? And so then Meghan starts panicking. Maybe she shouldn't be so obvious about things. Corey's like, are you having an affair? And she's like, no, I don't know why you would think that. This is just what I have to do for work. And so she gets her agent to reach out to Ryan, the one who had initially reported McIlroy and Meghan out at that restaurant. And the agent was like, make a correction, okay? This cannot get out. You don't need to be saying this kind of stuff. She's in a very serious relationship with Corey, the chef, not Rory, the golfer. And Ryan comes back out and writes a piece about, how Meghan and Corey are madly in love and how the two of them are sewn at the hip the entire time they were in Ireland. BS, because where has Corey been? Well, she's been in the lap of Rory. Okay, so Meghan was relieved. The golfer was not her future, and Corey was still her Toronto facilitator. So she's managed to make sure nothing goes away. The status quo can remain. She can wild out as much as she wants to, but so long as nobody calls her on it. Okay, so the two of them planned to fly to Paris for the weekend, maybe to stitch together what was left of their little relationship. And she met with Gina Nelthorpe Crown, who promised her new client an exciting future as a showcased asset. She told her, look, let's get you some endorsement deals, some engagements. I can get you engagements as a public speaker, and I'd also like to get you as the face of some kind of major brand. And Meghan's like, oh, absolutely. I already know which brand I want to do. I want to be the face of L'Oreal. Also, my legs are awesome. They're like, Meghan writes, I have legs as long as a mile, so I would be awesome as some kind of skincare brand or something like that, because I just visually am stunning. I don't know if she's looking at the same pictures we are. Okay, so their relationship was sealed with a kiss in her emails to Gina, thanking her for her support. Meghan signed her messages, sending love, XO, 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 hugs and kisses, MM. Gross. Why is she so syrupy? Why does she have to be so much all the time? What is this? XO, 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 hugs and kisses. Please. All right, meantime, the show's still going on over in Toronto. And not just Suits, but also Meghan's constant need to surround herself with her girl squad. Me and my girl squad sipping rosé. Oh, gross. Okay, so she's still trying to learn from the movers and shakers in Toronto. Sophie Trudeau's husband had just been elected the Liberal Party's leader, and he was forecast to be the country's prime minister, as we've seen that played out. She's met this new singer and new friend, Martina Sorbaro, and this friend happened to be the daughter of a Canadian politician. Jessica Mulroney is still searching for recognition as a social media personality. And her search for fame is not going well. She'd had some kind of odd association with a grocery store chain, but that had faltered. Still, Meghan's relationship with Jessica was never stronger. People didn't really understand why Meghan was such good friends with Jessica, because Jessica wasn't really able to promote Meghan in any kind of a way. And one savvy newspaper diarist stated that this friendship was probably the result of poor judgment, or else maybe there just was no one else to be friends with. But for Meghan to be so cozy with Jessica was odd, because all of Meghan's relationships are transactional and Jessica really had nothing to exchange. At this time, it became really evident, though, that Meghan's jealousy of other women was kind of reaching new heights. Now, she had already shown jealousy in high school, and other people would get parts. It would just really tear her up and she'd be upset about it. But as a young girl, people saw it more as just ambition to continue to do well. And now it's really taking on an ugly color. Bauer says that there was another unseen characteristic in Meghan that became evident at this time. She suffered terrible envy of other women's wealth, looks, and social success. What at school and in Hollywood was classed as healthy ambition had metamorphed into jealousy. Increasingly, envy colored so much of her life. But also what was coloring her life at this time was that she wanted to become known as not just an actress, not just as somebody who is promoting all kinds of like lifestyle hacks and lifestyle brands, and not just somebody who's real into clothes, but now she also wants to project herself as a voice of positivity, and she wants to use whatever status she has as an actress to make a tangible impact on the world and give speeches to young people, and be this burgeoning politician of sorts. And I've heard people say over and over that Meghan's next foray is into politics, and I've always poo-pooed that idea, because I thought, who in the world would give this woman a platform? She's got nothing to say. We pan over to the current VP, and I think it's evident that I guess you don't have to have much to say in order to get a foothold in this world. But I just didn't think she could legitimately want to be in politics. It just didn't seem like it's that exciting. Like, for her personality, politics doesn't seem like it would be glamorous enough, But I guess maybe she really has had serious ambition. I just don't see it as ever working out for her, though. Anyway, Meghan, until she could get a foothold in politics, even though a lot of her Toronto friends have roots in politics, it doesn't look like that's really... She's not gaining a lot of ground on making herself part of that particular scene, so she's continuing to focus on the TIG. Now, her big thing on the TIG was to spread joy to her followers. But this is not joy that is being spread. She'd say things like this: in case no one has told you today, you deserve endless pizza and love. And give a nice butt. Not after all that pizza. Everyone in her opinion should be free to choose their own reality and values. Sexual attraction increasingly featured on her website. At the same time, she was becoming intolerant of ideas that did not match her own. She had little patience for other people's values. In her world, she simply got angry with people who refused to agree with her. And boy, are we going to see this coming on down the road. But this is where she really starts to think that she's so important and that so many people are following her that she doesn't have to be tolerant of other people's ideas. She's the one bringing the truth, and it's your job to agree that that's the truth. And that's such a classic trope of like modern ideology, that let's be tolerant of everyone except for you, and you. You guys' ideas are trash, but let's be tolerant. It never makes sense. It's so illogical. Okay, so at the same time that she's trying to make much of herself in the world, she's still got to play the character of Rachel Zane, but she's real keen now on making sure that Rachel Zane is very clearly going along with her personal brand in life. So up until this point, the writers have always used Meghan as inspiration, but now she's really up in the writing room trying to make sure that Rachel Zane is on brand for Meghan Markle. And so Rachel Zane's behavior and the things that she's choosing to do can't be too insidious and strange, because Meghan wants to be this warm, inviting, super sharp, but super sweet kind of individual. And so she wants her character not to do anything that would put Meghan Markle in moral jeopardy. If that makes sense. I'll go on to explain. She was upset about a storyline that was coming up in which Meghan would be having an affair with a co-star in the show. People who were watching the show, a handful of viewers, protested that Zayn was about to start an affair. And Meghan Markle's name was getting tacked to Rachel Zane's behavior. And Meghan felt like she didn't want to be at jeopardy. She didn't want her reputation to be jeopardized by Rachel Zane's behavior, because there were some people who couldn't seem to separate her character. Surprisingly, she can't seem to notice that she's not separating her character for other people. When she's been invited to speak, she continually talks about how she and Rachel are the same. So of course, when Rachel goes and does things that don't make sense on the show, Meghan is going to hear about that from the viewers, who are like, yeah, but you said you're the same, so you must espouse these virtues and this value system. So she's upset. She's in the writer's room. She's trying to get them to change storylines so that she can look better in the show. And they do actually shift the storyline so that she doesn't have to feel so morally bankrupt as a character. Strangely, Meghan goes on to say, I don't read any press. Even when I was on Suits, I never cared what anybody said about Suits. I mean, I knew that I was on a really great show, and I didn't need to care what other people said. But then why are you reacting to, and why are writers coming out now saying, oh yeah, she wasn't happy with where we were going with her character, and she felt like it mirrored her own reputation in real life. All right. Well, she might not have been happy about the writing on the show, but she loved the clothes she got to wear. And the costume designer, Jolie Andreatta, dressed her in some high fashion. Lots of expensive labels, Dior, Prada, Burberry. And Meghan credited Andreatta with influencing her understanding of fashion, especially the power of a white shirt, a Tom Ford pencil skirt, and the all-importance of the fit, Well, did you need somebody to tell you that clothes that are tailored are much more flattering to any figure? Apparently she did. But to her disappointment, Andreatta said in an interview that Meghan wasn't her favorite actress to dress. I can imagine it was hard to dress Meghan. Meghan has an interesting figure because she's not very tall, and she does have long legs for her. She's got a shorter torso and longer legs. It would be difficult to dress that figure, I think. I mean, I think that Meghan looks very nice when she's well put together. But the problem is that I think that she's sometimes, either she's dressing herself or she's had people who are dressing her that don't want to cater to her specific shape. They're looking at clothes that are beautiful, but beautiful clothes don't always look great on all shapes. I mean, I'm very pear-shaped. I have to dress specifically for my shape or I just look ridiculous. And I know that. So I can see, like, I can be shopping for clothes and see something that's stunning on the model, but I instinctively know that's super cute on her. That would look like trash on me. Most women can realize this, but I don't feel like Meghan has always realized this, because some of her fashion choices, I think just are not flattering to her figure. But when she does wear clothes that are fitted to her really well, she looks beautiful. So I don't know. I think that Meghan and fashion, they don't go hand in hand. She's had a lot of ups and downs in that world. Okay. At the same time, right around 2014, Meghan is, again, continuing more projects, continuing to try to work outside of the Suits brand. And she's got a movie on the Hallmark Channel. It flops, but does any Hallmark Channel movie do super well? I mean, isn't it just kind of on as something to watch? So she continues to think, how can I get more exposure as an activist and a philanthropist? Because it just doesn't feel like acting is always going super well for her. I mean, of course, she's got her Suits show, but everything else as an actress is sort of falling through. She gets this gig with a bunch of American entertainers. It's sponsored through the Pentagon. They're flying on Air Force Two. They're going through all these different military bases in Spain and Italy and Turkey and Britain, flying back and forth. And these entertainers were supposed to show up at these military bases and give some kind of program. People didn't really get necessarily who Meghan was or what her deal was, because her biography said that she was actively involved in the socio-political arena. Is she? And that she worked at the American Embassy in Buenos Aires, and that she now worked closely with the United Nations Women. But her performance or her presentation just made no impression on audiences. They just didn't really know what she was there for. And what is all of this political work? But then she spent the whole time talking about Suits. And her little peppery speech about her character, Rachel Zane, just didn't connect with any of the audiences. Like, what are you talking about? Then it was around Christmas time, and when she was asked to sing, she looked pained and perturbed. And when she was asked to sing White Christmas, that really annoyed her. You know, why? You know, it's just, that's so lame. You know, kind of just annoyed at having to entertain people. But that's exactly why she had been brought on. Anyway, meantime, she continues to enjoy her relationship with Corey. He still isn't asking too many questions and accepting the status quo. And hoping that it all gets smoothed over. Her life in Toronto was good because Corey's mother also really approved of her. She thought that Meghan had hung the moon. And she was convinced that Meghan was a saint, unlike the Engelsons 5 years ago, who were constantly trying to poison Trevor against her. And it would seem that for a little while, Meghan was tempted to maybe go with the whole Corey relationship thing. Like, maybe there really was something here. In fact, in December 2014, they even flew down to Miami Art Week and spent the time down there at, where do you guess? Soho Beach House. Oh my gosh, the girl does not know where else to stay. Of course, the whole time she was down there, she was hunting contracts and trying to network and find people who could give her more work. At this time, she meets somebody who is very important to her future. And this, again, is where you can just see how much Meghan was lying when she says she had no idea who William and Harry were. We've always known that was a lie. But then the fact that she would cling on to people who had even the most remote connections to the royal family just shows you that she always in the back of her mind had that plan as a possibility. While she was down in Florida, she was invited by Marcus Anderson to a lunch, and he arranged for her to sit next to Misha Nonu, who was an aspiring fashion designer. Nonu says that these are her own words. Okay. Looks like Meghan had found herself one of her own. I'm very spiritual. I meditate twice a day, and I love gong baths and sound healing. Gong baths and sound healing. Okay, well, good for you. Nonu, Meghan wrote later on the tag, was the kind of woman you instantly adore. I don't. Meghan and Nonu were both into climbing the greasy pole of life. Both of them were looking for a step up. And Meghan admired Nonu because she'd stepped into this world and managed to get herself engaged to and married to Alexander Gilkes, who was an old Etonian friend of Princes William and Harry. So Meghan hears that and decides to cling all the more to Nonu, even despite the gong baths and sound healing. Meghan became persuaded that Nonu's apparently rich British husband was an ideal type for herself. Okay, so I don't think it's necessarily saying she's trying to steal Nonu's husband, but she certainly saw that this was the kind that she needed to get in with. About the same time, it would appear that since she'd met Nonu, that whole little trip down to Florida for Miami Fashion Week had fallen by the wayside, and that any ideas she had of kindling her relationship back with Corey to its roaring former flame was no longer something she was interested in. By Valentine's Day, she was writing on the tag that she's definitely sending out the signal that she was single now. Previous to Valentine's Day, right after Christmas, she had flown with her family to LA so that she could introduce her parents to Corey for the first time. But I think it's here where she just realized that she and Corey just had gone as far as they could. Interestingly, at this little visit with her parents, she met Thomas and Doria for lunch. She gave each of them a $5,000 check. And it was a pleasant day. They appreciated meeting Corey for the first time. Thomas wasn't blown over. He said that Corey was just a nice guy, but not anything special. And Corey quickly forgot the event. 7 weeks later, he and Meghan were separated. So, it was just over. It all fizzled out. And Meghan writes on the TIG that Valentine's Day, "This Valentine's Day, I'll be with friends, running amok through the streets of New York, likely imbibing some cocktail that's oddly pink, and jumping over icy mounds in my new shoes through the salted, snowy streets of the West Village. But those shoes, by the way, were a gift to myself. Because I've worked hard, because I'm not going to wait for someone to buy me the things I covet, nor do I want to, and because I want to treat myself as well as I treat those dearest to me, because I am my own funny Valentine." I can't even get through this. You're your own funny Valentine. Oh, how cute. This is just, I hate the way she writes these fantasies. It's just so Sex in the City, isn't it though? Oh gosh, don't even get me started on that show. I could talk for like 17 hours straight about how much I hate that show and what a detriment it was to American feminism. But she says that, she had talked to the girls, her sister wives on Suits, and they had all talked about how she needed to learn to love herself and have the same self-love that she showed to everyone, because she was such an awesome person and was so loving to everybody that her friends wanted her to realize that she needed to love herself in the same capacity. And so that's what she's on a journey to do. She's also on a journey to get out of Toronto because she feels like New York might be the better place for her to be. That's where the movers and the shakers are, and she's kind of ready to shake the dust of Toronto off her feet and move on because she's done what Toronto has to offer. It's a small community of famous people. She's met all of them. They've taken her as far as they can take her. She's ready to move on, and off she goes to New York. Tom Bauer says that her idols were Angelina Jolie and Emma Watson. He keeps saying that. He said that a couple times already, and I haven't mentioned it because, he says they had these lifestyle brands and this sort of persona that she was interested in. And I hadn't really thought that much about it. And then I thought, well, I guess as far as being an activist, both of those women are pretty active in that arena. So maybe that's why. But anyway, she wants to go off and be and do and show everybody all the awesome sides to her positive personality in New York. So that's what we're off to do. Our next chapter is called Hillary. Apparently she's going to bump into Hillary Clinton. So that ought to be an interesting chapter. Not. All right, Meghan. I can't wait for her to meet Harry. And it's coming up. The other night I was reading ahead a little bit because I wanted to see what Tom Bauer had to say about the royal family, and his take is interesting. I hadn't expected how tough he'd be on William. Kind of tough on William. And I thought he was fairly easy on Harry, but I didn't read that far into it. I just sort of skimmed the first chapter. So maybe when I actually go and review that chapter, I'll take it back, what I'm saying. But I was sort of surprised. Anyway, I will see you guys later this weekend. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye-bye.